Have you ever noticed how the smallest moments of disrespect can echo in your mind for days, weeks, even years afterward? Someone makes a dismissive comment in a meeting. A friend interrupts you mid-sentence for the third time. Your partner rolls their eyes when you're trying to explain something important. And in that moment, you feel it. That subtle contraction in your chest, that voice in your head asking, should I say something or am I being too sensitive? So you stay quiet. You let it slide. You tell yourself it's not worth the confrontation, that you're being mature by taking the high road, that addressing it would make you seem petty or difficult. But here's something strange. While you're congratulating yourself on your restraint, something else is happening beneath the surface. Something you can't quite name. A small shift in how you see yourself. A barely perceptible change in the dynamic between you and the other person. The disrespect you ignored didn't disappear. It settled. It took root. And this raises a question that most of us never stop to consider. What does it cost us when we don't address disrespect immediately? What are we really trading away when we choose silence? Let's start with what seems like a simple interaction. You're at dinner with friends. You begin telling a story, something that matters to you, something you're excited to share. Midway through, someone cuts you off to tell their own story. The conversation shifts. Your moment dissolves into the background noise. It's small, it happens all the time, and you think, it's fine, it's not a big deal. But here's the thing, your nervous system doesn't experience it as fine. In that moment, your brain is processing a signal, and that signal says, your words don't matter enough to be heard. Your experience doesn't warrant protection. You are interruptible. Neuroscientist Dr. Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory, explains that our nervous system is constantly scanning for cues of safety and danger in our social environment. This process, called neuroception, happens below conscious awareness. When someone disrespects you, even in a seemingly minor way, your nervous system registers it as a social threat. And what do we do with threats? We adapt to them. Here's where it gets fascinating. The human brain is exquisitely designed for pattern recognition. It doesn't just record individual events, it extracts rules from them. It asks, what does this mean about how the world works? What does this tell me about my place in it? When you allow disrespect to go unaddressed, you're not just letting one moment pass. You're sending yourself a message. You're teaching your brain a pattern. The pattern says, my boundaries are negotiable. My dignity is conditional. My voice is optional. And your brain, being the excellent student it is, learns this lesson well. The next time disrespect happens, you'll hesitate a little longer before speaking up. The voice that asks, am I being too sensitive, will get a little louder. The space between your authentic response and your compliant silence will grow wider. This is how self-betrayal becomes a habit. But the consequences extend far beyond your internal experience, because here's what most people don't realize. Disrespect is relational. It doesn't exist in isolation. It's a dance, and your response is part of the choreography. Think about what happens in the mind of the person who disrespected you. They made a comment, they interrupted, they dismissed, and you did nothing. From their perspective, this moment just got filed under acceptable behavior. They received implicit permission to treat you this way. Not because they're necessarily malicious, most people aren't consciously trying to hurt you, but because humans learn from feedback, and silence is a form of feedback. Silence says, this is fine, and once something is coded as fine, it becomes the new baseline. The relationship recalibrates around this lower standard of treatment. What was once a boundary violation becomes normalized. What was once unacceptable becomes routine. Psychologists call this tolerance erosion. It's the gradual process by which our standards decay, not through dramatic violations, but through countless small ones that we choose not to address. The person who interrupted you, they'll interrupt you again and again, because in the absence of correction, behavior reinforces itself. The friend who made the dismissive comment, they've learned that you're a safe target for their stress, their insecurity, their displaced frustration. You've become the person they can be careless with, not because you deserve it, but because you've signaled that you'll accept it. And this is where it gets complex, because we need to understand why we don't speak up in these moments. The reasons are rarely about the other person, they're about us. Sometimes we stay quiet because we've internalized the belief that our needs are burdensome. We learned early, perhaps from parents who were overwhelmed, from environments where emotions were unwelcome, that taking up space is selfish, that having boundaries makes us difficult. Sometimes it's about conflict avoidance. We witnessed explosive fights as children, or we've been hurt by our own anger in the past, so we've developed an allergy to confrontation. We'd rather amputate our own needs than risk a moment of tension. Sometimes it's about worthiness. Deep down, beneath all our rationalizations, we're not sure we deserve to be treated with respect. We're not convinced that our dignity is non-negotiable, so when disrespect happens, it confirms something we already suspected about ourselves. Attachment theory helps us understand this. If you grew up with inconsistent caregiving, sometimes attuned, sometimes dismissive, you likely developed what psychologists call an anxious or disorganized attachment style. Your nervous system learned that love and respect are unreliable. So as an adult, when someone treats you poorly, part of you thinks, well, of course, this is just how it is. You've been primed to accept less. But here's the truth. Every time you fail to address disrespect, you're not just allowing someone else to diminish you. You're participating in your own diminishment. You're actively constructing a version of yourself that is smaller, quieter, more accommodating than you actually are. You're living in what psychologist Carl Rogers called conditions of worth, the belief that your value is contingent on not making waves, not being too much, not demanding what you need. And the cost of this? It's not theoretical, it's visceral. You're not attacking, you're not punishing, you're simply clarifying what's acceptable. And here's what's fascinating. Most people will adjust. Not everyone. Some people are so invested in their patterns that they can't. But most people, when given clear, immediate feedback, will recalibrate. Because most people aren't trying to hurt you. They're just operating on autopilot, repeating their own unexamined patterns, moving through the world with the level of consciousness they currently possess. When you speak up, you create a moment of consciousness. You invite them to see what they're doing, and that creates an opportunity for the relationship to become more authentic, more mutual, more real. But even if they don't adjust, even if they get defensive or dismissive or double down, you've still done something essential. You've honored yourself. You've refused to abandon yourself in favor of keeping the peace. And this matters more than you might think. Research in self-determination theory shows that autonomy, the feeling that you're acting in accordance with your authentic self, is one of the core psychological needs. When we violate our own boundaries to accommodate others, we damage our sense of autonomy. We fracture the relationship with ourselves. Addressing disrespect immediately is a practice of self-integration. It's how you stay whole. Think of it this way. You are always in relationship with yourself. That relationship never ends. You will be with yourself through every moment of your life. And every time you fail to honor your own boundaries, you teach yourself that you can't be trusted. That when it matters, you'll choose safety over truth, comfort over integrity. But when you speak up, when you address disrespect as it happens, calmly and clearly, you prove to yourself that you're capable of self-protection, that you can be counted on, that you won't abandon yourself even when it's uncomfortable. This is how self-trust is built, not through grand gestures, but through countless small moments where you choose yourself. Now let's be clear about what addressing disrespect immediately actually means, because I think this is where people get confused. It doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean escalating or attacking or meeting disrespect with more disrespect. It means responding with clarity, with firmness, with the kind of calm directness that comes from knowing your worth is not up for debate. It might sound like, I'd like to finish what I was saying. Or, that comment felt dismissive. I need you to speak to me with respect. Or simply, that doesn't work for me. Notice the absence of apology. Notice the absence of over-explanation. You're not asking permission to have boundaries. You're stating reality. The goal isn't to punish the other person. It's to clarify the terms of engagement. To say, if we're going to be in relationship, this is the baseline of how we treat each other. And the reason to do this immediately, not later, not after you've stewed on it, not after you've rehearsed the conversation 17 times in your head, is because immediacy minimizes distortion. When you address something in the moment, it's clear what you're referring to. There's no ambiguity. The other person can't rewrite the narrative or claim they don't remember. The emotional truth of the moment is still palpable, but when you wait, when you let days or weeks pass, the interaction gets filtered through memory, through rumination, through your own anxiety. By the time you bring it up, it's no longer fresh. It's become a story you're telling, and stories can be argued with. Immediacy gives you power. It keeps things simple and direct. Of course, there's a shadow side to all of this that we need to address. Because the truth is, not every relationship can handle your boundaries. Not every person in your life is capable of treating you with respect, even when you clearly articulate what you need. Some people are so defended, so wounded, so committed to their own patterns that they will experience your boundary as an attack. They will call you sensitive, dramatic, difficult. They will try to make you doubt yourself. They will escalate rather than adjust. And this is painful, because it forces you to see the relationship clearly, to see that maybe this person isn't safe for you, that maybe the cost of staying connected is too high. Addressing disrespect immediately functions as a diagnostic. It reveals who has the capacity for mutual respect and who doesn't. It shows you who's willing to grow with you and who's invested in keeping you small. And sometimes what you discover is heartbreaking. The friend you thought you could count on doubles down when you set a boundary. The family member who claims to love you can't seem to treat you with basic dignity. The partner you've built a life with refuses to acknowledge that their behavior is hurtful. This is when addressing disrespect becomes about more than just a single interaction. It becomes about the trajectory of your life, about whether you're willing to honor yourself even when it means disappointing others, even when it means disrupting the status quo, even when it means being alone for a while. But here's what I want you to understand. The loneliness of being true to yourself is never as hollow as the loneliness of betraying yourself. When you stay in relationships where disrespect is normalized, you're not really connected anyway. You're performing a version of yourself that's been compressed and edited to fit someone else's comfort. You're there in body, but absent in spirit. Real connection requires that you show up as yourself, all of yourself, with your boundaries intact, your needs expressed, your dignity non-negotiable. And yes, this might mean fewer relationships, but the ones that remain will be real. They'll be built on truth rather than tolerance, on mutual respect rather than one-sided accommodation. The psychologist Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And I think part of what makes it terrifying is that complete self-acceptance includes accepting that you deserve respect, that your boundaries matter, that you're not required to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. When you start addressing disrespect immediately, you're practicing radical self-acceptance. You're saying, "I matter, my experience matters, I'm worth protecting." And this changes everything. Let me tell you what happens over time when you make this a practice. Your nervous system starts to relax, because it learns that you're not going to allow situations where you're chronically diminished. It learns that you can be trusted to take care of yourself. Your relationships clarify. The people who respect you naturally find it easy to honor your boundaries. The ones who don't reveal themselves and often drift away. What remains is more genuine, more nourishing, more aligned with who you actually are. Your sense of self strengthens. You stop questioning whether you're too much or too sensitive. You develop an internal compass that tells you when something is off, and you trust it. You become your own advocate, your own protector, your own ally. This is what empowerment actually looks like. Not domination or control, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you won't abandon yourself, that you'll speak up when something matters, that your dignity is not for sale. And maybe that's the real reason why addressing disrespect immediately is essential. Not because it guarantees that people will treat you better, though often they will. Not because it makes relationships easier, though sometimes it does, but because it's how you maintain integrity with yourself. It's how you stay whole in a world that constantly asks you to fragment. It's how you honor the sacred contract between you and your own soul, that you'll protect this life, this body, this voice, this unrepeatable existence. Every time someone disrespects you, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to the familiar territory of silence, of accommodation, of slow erosion. The other leads to discomfort, uncertainty, and the possibility of conflict, but also to self-respect, authenticity, and the kind of relationships that can hold the full truth of who you are. You don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to address every slight, every minor infraction, every moment of thoughtlessness. But the pattern matters. The overall trajectory of your choices matters. Are you moving toward yourself or away from yourself? Are you expanding into your full presence or contracting to fit someone else's limitations? So the next time someone disrespects you, and there will be a next time because we live in an imperfect world full of unconscious people doing their best, pause for just a moment. Feel what's happening in your body. Notice the impulse to stay quiet, to let it go, to convince yourself it doesn't matter. And then ask yourself, what would it be like to speak? What would it feel like to honor this moment, to honor myself, to say what's true? You might be surprised by how simple it can be, how clarifying it feels to say, that doesn't work for me, or I need you to speak to me differently. You might be surprised by how often people adjust, apologize, shift when given the chance. But even if they don't, even if speaking up costs you that relationship, you'll have gained something more valuable, the knowledge that you can be counted on, that you're on your own side, that you won't sell yourself out for the illusion of harmony. This is the practice. This is the path. Not toward perfection, but toward wholeness, toward a life where you're fully present, fully yourself, fully worthy of respect, starting with your own.